a lot of kids and youth are going to be using the folder. So we're going to get a close look at how we can clean that up. Really, it's going to be more a matter of wiping with stainless steel and then how to use a pull through. So here we are in the big backyard, and we're going to look at the tools. I'm going to focus in this video on knives and actually what I like to use, but really actually how to take care of knives. So we're going to have a close look at that. We're going to come back to the knives. I'm going to show you how to clean up a knife because I use high carbon knives a lot, although stainless steel is not such a big an issue. I want to use some dirt to clean it, which may shock some people. And I'm going to focus on pull-throughs as a beginner way of sharpening knives. So if you take a look at what's on the table with me, we've got some important tools for harvesting and then cleaning up our staves. And this won't be maybe necessarily decorating them, but you've got to get basically your stick. Starting on the front left, this is going to be a stainless steel folder we're going to look at with a pull through, and I'll show you some of those pull throughs in a minute. I'd say it's pretty common. A lot of people are going to have some kind of a folding knife with some little gadgets on it, and super popular with scouting. And it's not a horrible size. You don't need something huge. Nobody needs a big Rambo knife or machete or something like that for camping, although it can be fun and cool. Okay, then you've got a multi-tool. It doesn't matter which kind. I mean, you can use a Gerber or a Leatherman. They're quite expensive, so youth are usually starting with some no-name brand, and this can be handy because of the pliers and everything else. Some of the screwdrivers don't really need the corkscrew for wine, but it can be used for drilling. I like to make sure I have an awl on a multi-tool, so I'm going to carry this or something like this. I did mention these folders, so these, but this is a great starting fixed blade if you don't have, and lots of videos on them. This one's the Mora Companion, but the HD version, so a little thicker. Now I did flatten the top here with a file so I can use a ferro rod, and I do like the carbon steel. You'll see rust gather if it's not oiled right, and I leave this in my camp bag, my fire bag actually, so it gets used and abused. But a lot of kids and youth are going to be using the folder, so we're going to get a close look at how we can clean that up. Really, it's going to be more a matter of wiping with stainless steel and then how to use a pull through. I'm going to take a closer look at the pull throughs that are available in a second here. Okay, and this is my little guy's folder to replace his Victorinox. It's probably in pretty decent condition because he hasn't really used it yet, but we're going to be able to use that to trim up a stick. Really, theoretically, you could even cut one down, but you'd be at it a long time and could risk hurting yourself. Now, this one does not have a lock on it, so you really need to be careful. But you actually use dirt if there was a bunch of junk on here, and I know that's going to make you cringe, but you would just back and forth. Now, a little risky, so you want to make sure probably you're rubbing back and forth and not moving towards yourself until you're used to handling a knife, just kind of even and steady, and that'll take off a lot of the dirt, and then you can just wipe that, and you're going to be ready. Give that a few wipes, and if you had a cloth, you could do that to use the sharpener. Now, that's not really that needed on stainless steel, not too often. But these guys, and we can take a close look at that, you're going to see often it's going to build up carbon. And when they're not put away properly or oiled, which is the case in a shared bag, especially with people who aren't used to knives, I'm going to have to clean it up. So I find I'm a little more vigorous with the dirt on this one. That's all I have. Right? And sandpaper is really good for that. Just give it a good wipe it down, and you really squeeze it a bit, but be careful when you're handling this. So make sure if you're younger, your grown-up knows you're doing this, or your parent, whoever's in charge of you, and you grown-ups, be careful. If you haven't handled a knife before, you could cut yourself on a sharp knife. And this one's going to be moderately sharp, not brutal. And so there's no real nicks in here. It's just about getting any of that carbon or rust off of there. And so once that's done, we can wipe that down and give it a sharpen. And if you don't like where it's at, just in the field, that's going to take off some of this carbonization or oxidization, actually. And when you get home, maybe try some steel wool or some of that plastic scrubbing pads. Be really vigorous and put some oil on it. But out in the field, it's a bit of dirt. I do that with the pots too, believe it or not. This is something you could find around in your kitchen. Some people have these, and it's going to have a wider range of grit or coarseness to it. There are little ceramic wheels in here, and we'll look at that. When we're pulling through, I'll hold that closer so we can hear it. As the knife goes through, it's going to roll the wheel and grind off some material. So when we're sharpening, we're removing material, and there's just no way around that. This is probably going to do a better job than some of the other ones, but I don't want to carry this around in my bag. It's quite big. It does give you that sort of coarse, medium, and then your fine, so you get a nice edge on there. And it's different than a stone. It's not going to cause burring in the same way, so you shouldn't really worry about stroping it, because you're not getting that effect when you're sharpening with a stone where you're bending the metal one way and then bending it the other. But this is only really going to work on a blade that's reasonable. If it's banged up, you might need to switch to a file. We're not going to look at that. We're just going to look at regular maintenance. You know, you could do this at camp, but not with this one. We're going to move to the next thing. Now, this one over here, specifically for hatchets. And when I look at hatchets later, I'm going to show you that one because it's going to work. I do like just using a stone, and you can get one of those circular stones, but a regular one works. But that'd be a quick way to maintain a hatchet. Most people don't need them to shave with, although I really like a super sharp hatchet. So starting with the 3 different grits, or of course, kind of a kitchen type sharpener, you're going to want to have this also on a surface that you don't care about. So if you're worried about your table, get yourself a chunk of wood, good old handy piece of 2x4 piece lying around, well, I guess the backyard, it is backyard bushcrafting. And you want to start with the coarse grit. And if it's in good shape, you really only need 10 or 20 pull-throughs. And if you're even and you're not in a rush, you can pull that through. You can get away with it on a picnic table if you don't care that much. If you're on a public campsite, maybe they do. So you got 3 pull-throughs here. And I just use my thumb as a guide to find the groove because I'm visually impaired. I can't always see it, but you can feel it there. You want to make sure you're in that coarse grit. It's going to remove the most material and clean up some of those little nicks. And you can probably work with it at that point, but I can really feel that, and hopefully you can hear that, even though there's construction noise. And of course, sirens. This awesome backyard bushcraft in the city. You got that gritty sound, and that's telling me it's removing material. So I'll do that maybe 4 or 5 more times. I'm going to show you guys another way to do this, but just focusing on this. And I'm going to grab a stick and we'll take a look at that. But, you know, 10, 20 times, it's not really going to matter. You don't have to worry about left and right unless you're putting too much pressure one way or the other. You're not going to get a lot of burring on the edge here. You want to move over to the middle grit, medium, I guess. And there should be markers on your pull-through. Just pull through, and it doesn't sound and or feel nearly as rough. It's kind of a smoother roll, and that means, you know, it's fitting in between the wheel a little better. It's less aggressive. You do want to roll that tip off, and that's one of those things. A good sharp tip is useful, and you want to give that probably about 10. Like I do 20 if I can on the rougher to fix it if the edge of the blade is really messed up. But in something that's in decent condition, I want to do that maybe only 10 times. I'm not even counting here, so I'll just go 1 or 2 more. That happens when you get old, you start talking, forget things. Then go over to the fine, and you're going to feel this is really smooth. Now, if you're taking a look at the blade after you do that and you run your fingers across, you might feel a little bit of grit. It's going to be some actual removed material, so steel, on the blade. And just go over to the fine. And this one's going to be super smooth most of the time. I want it to be nice and even. And it pulls really nice because, you know what? It's just removing the least amount of material, getting the finest edge. That's what you're going for. And so you could do that 10 times. Here I'm just trying to get the edge there. And I've lost track on the number of times I've pulled this through, but it should be good and sharp. So we're going to have a look at how sharp that is after. But I'm going to switch over sharpener types. You can use this pull through sitting down on something hard, grip it firmly. There's some friction here, and you can pull that through the medium and the fine. I'm going to actually flip it around with a folding knife and try another way. Now, this way that I'm going to do that, you really have to be careful. And you need to make sure when you're using your knife, you're following all those knife safety tips and rules. And in Scouts, where I'm at, we need something called blood circle. So, okay, so moving on to my favorite pull through for camping. It's small, it's light, it fits anywhere, fit in that tactical bag. It's handy, and it's got what you need. If your blade is in reasonable shape, clean the grit off with that medium, that fine. I'm going to switch hands. I want the most control over this, and this is my more dominant hand. Over the pull-through, I do want control over the knife. I'm going to pull my arms in, and that's going to be one of those physics things where if you're out and there's a lot of energy. You don't have as much control. Pull that back in, get your elbows tight against your body. And that's because I'm going to pull out the main blade that I'm sharpening. Okay, so I'm not going to get this knife. Just got off my little gun foil, so there's the main blade. Open that up. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to hold that from the bottom. I don't want any fingers near the blade when possible. I'm going to probably brace that here. We're going to watch the technique may change a little. It just depends on how far down, because that's a thin blade. This fits inside of the grooves. I'm going to put that on the medium grit. Pull the arms in. I don't want to be pulling up so hard I slash myself in the face, so I'm going to put medium force here and medium force here. I don't have to fight this thing, just firm. Why I like to do this is I'm going to get rolled around the tip. I don't have a lot of slashing motions with the blade. What's moving more than anything is going to be this. So if I'm pulling away and I whack someone, that's not going to hurt as much. It's going to annoy them though, so you're going to have to say, hey, sorry, bud, and then get out of my blood circle. So I can put this as close to the blade as I can. And usually the folders don't have a really big guard. This one has one a few millimeters. I pull that until I feel that it's right at the end of the blade, keeping the fingers. We'll switch sides here. Keeping the fingers out of the way of the blade. I'm going to have it down here. Keep that firmly. Really putting some pressure. We're going to come around this way from the thumb. Turn sideways on a bit of an angle here. We're going to pull that forward. So one. It's going to go pretty quick. It's a medium grit, and this blade is actually pretty sharp. It hasn't really been used. Nice and smooth. We don't have to rush, and I can pull down around the curve of the blade really easily, so it's not awkward. I'm not putting a lot of force up, and again, maybe 10 or 20 times. I think that was 4. How about yours at home? You tell me how much you think that was at that point. 5, we're going to say now, though. I'm going to do 5 more. And you'll notice there's a bit of pressure up, but I'm not pulling so hard to whack myself. Yeah, if I'm pulling really hard and I'm whacking people, there's not as much control. We need to have control over the blade. And even these little pocket knives, just as sharp as a bigger knife, you really want that. So if you take care of your knives with sharpening, you're going to have the tools you need for making your scout stave. So I'm biting in here a little much. So you get a nice long cut, and it doesn't actually take that much force. These thinner blades, get the angle right, you can really shave a lot of material when they're sharp. You can't put a lot of force on them because of the hinge, so you got to be careful there. But they really will do the job.